All right, so welcome back. This is going to be topic 1.4, state building in the Americas. This is still unit 1 of your world history curriculum, the global tapestry. So here is a quick snapshot of the civilizations and their approximate locations that we are going to focus on when we are talking about the Americas. So with the Americas, the focus of this entire topic is governance or politics. What I'd like you to know by the time you are done with these slides is I want you to be able to explain how and why states in the Americas developed and changed over time. Now, historically, in the Americas, as in Afro-Eurasia, state systems demonstrated continuity, innovation, and diversity, and expanded in scope and reach. Here we have pictured a Mayan temple in Chichen Itza. So this will be a good point to start talking about the Maya and the Maya city-states. So the Maya civilization was located in the Yucatan Peninsula, which encompasses present-day southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and a portion of Honduras. To avoid confusion about the use of Maya versus Mayan, let's run through the proper use of each. It's important that you understand that Maya and Mayan refer to the same culture and people and not to two different cultures. Furthermore, if you use Mayan instead of Maya on the exam, it is not going to affect your scores because there is such a common mistake and so little time is spent overall on the Maya in this course. So Maya civilization is broken into some general time periods. For this lesson, we are going to focus mainly on the classic and post-classic time frames. As pictured here. So the basic structure of the Mayan civilization changed during its long existence, but it was mostly characterized by city-states and sometimes chiefdoms, where kinship plays a larger role in determining political structure. The relationship of various city-states within the Mayan culture changed substantially from the classic to post-classic periods. Dominance and tributary relationships emerged in later Mayan history, whereas city-states in early periods were more independent of each other. Rulers in these city-states derived their power from a connection to the divine. They were thought to be intermediaries that carried out the wishes of deities from the supernatural world. This idea was consistently reinforced by public rituals. Pictured here is a bloodletting ritual in which potentially deadly stingray spines were used. Bloodletting was a way to give a sacrifice to the gods, and this particular ritual was probably performed at special events, such as when a person achieved a new rank within society. So let's examine how commerce in the Maya city-states occurred. So compared to the scope of other states we have studied so far, trade networks were smaller in the Maya region. Trade did extend beyond Maya city-states and stretched throughout Mesoamerica. That's the area of southern Mexico and northern Central America, which is defined by cultures that share certain characteristics, such as the Maya, Aztecs, and Olmecs, which are all part of Mesoamerica. But the Maya did not have advanced transportation systems or pack animals that could facilitate more substantial trade. Overland trade was executed by people on foot that carried goods, and trade via waterways was done by canoe. In cities, There is little concrete evidence of marketplaces. Most of our current knowledge about local commerce within Maya city-states come from Spanish records, which are from the later periods of Maya civilization. Some items that were traded included cotton for textiles, salt, vanilla, maize, and other food items, ceramics, and in the post-classic period, slaves were traded as well. So pictured here, we have a painted ceramic vase from the city of Sacul in Guatemala. So let's talk about urban centers and architecture. Maya urban areas typically grew from the center outward, and sometimes they expanded upwards as new buildings were placed on older structures. Most of the surviving ruins of Mayan cities represent areas inhabited by elite members of the population. Common people did not have dwellings made from stone, so those structures have not survived. As with many of the states we have studied so far, such as Heian, Japan, historical records and archaeological evidence gives us a clear picture about the most elite members of a society, but it leaves us with relatively little information about a society's lower classes. Pictured here is the ancient Maya city of Tikal, whose ruins were discovered in the mid-1800s by European explorers. Most of the city remained hidden in overgrowth until excavation began in the 1950s. And work is still being done today to uncover parts of the city where the majority of the population is thought to have resided. Architectural styles differ across Maya cities and through different time periods, but temples built upon pyramid structures are common even in different areas. The ball court is an important structure in Mayan history. Cities had wide rectangular areas surrounded by stone walls that had an amazing acoustic effect. Players in the court could hear anyone speaking, even from a whisper, from clear across the court. The largest Mayan ball court at Chichen Itza measures over 500 feet. That's 150 meters in length. So let's examine more about the Mayan language and writing. Mayan language is thought to have originated somewhere in present-day Guatemala and then to have spread and changed, but the field of study in Mayan language is incomplete. Remnants of these languages are still present in certain populations of Guatemala and surrounding areas, so these are not dead languages, but they are very removed from the Mayan culture and civilization that we are studying here. Mayan writing was the most advanced writing of its time in the Americas. The writing system contains both logograms, where a single image represents a word, and phonetic words, where sounds are represented with symbols and combined to make a word. While there were many books written in Mayan glyphs, many were destroyed by Spaniards under the direction of the Catholic Church. A few books survived and are pictured here on the slide. The process of deciphering Mayan glyphs began in the mid-1900s and is still a work in progress. It is estimated that about 85% of Mayan glyphs have been deciphered so far. This process is what has given us the most information about Maya civilization that has not come from accounts of Spanish explorer encounters with the Maya civilization. Deciphering the language has been a key part of getting a clearer picture of the Maya as they saw themselves. So let's talk about Mayan religion and ritual. In Mayan religion, there are many gods or deities, and many of them have overlapping representations. For example, there are several gods associated with death, and pictured here on the left is Kisin, a Maya deity of death and earthquakes. There are several gods that are considered to reign over death, but this is the most prominent one. There is also some overlap in the gods of the Maya and the gods we will see in the Aztec culture. The Quetzal, the bird shown at the top left, is a real bird that resides in this region, and its feathers are often featured as part of Mayan gods and ritual headdresses. We will also see the Quetzal show up in Aztec headdresses and gods. The Quetzal elements on gods show up heavily in the contact period, so after the arrival of the Spanish in the 1500s, but are not as present in Maya depictions of gods in the classic and post-classic periods. I want you to look at the picture of the Quetzal. Think for a second. I want you to think in your head. Be able to describe which part of the key scene, the death god pictured, might be inspired by an element of the Quetzal. So if you look at the very top, it looks like there are feathers that take a similar shape to the Quetzal tail feathers. Manifestations of Maya deities were heavily inspired by the natural element in which the Maya lived. Human sacrifice did have a role in Maya ritual, but it was reserved only for the most important ceremonies. Accounts of human sacrifice might make it seem like the practice was more common than it was. Spanish explorers tended to fixate on these types of events in their writings, and many of the surviving stone structures which offer Maya depictions, often of ceremony and ritual, tend not to portray more everyday elements of society. Human sacrifice was seen as the ultimate offering to the gods, and typically only certain high-value prisoners of war were used as sacrificial victims. There are similarities in the Aztec methods of sacrifice. So let's discuss how the Maya began to decline. Historians and archaeologists think the most likely contributing factors to the collapse of the Maya was environmental. There was an extended severe drought, and archaeological records indicate the Maya themselves may have engaged in logging that took a toll on the natural environment. Much like the Khmer, there is a whole list of possible contributing factors to the decline and fall of the Maya civilization. The lack of centralized unifying government meant warfare and competition amongst city-states was common, and this could certainly contribute to the weakening of the civilization. It has also been suggested that overpopulation affected their societies, and this might be connected to the drought and logging issues, as a larger population combined with shrinking ability to produce food would almost certainly affect the civilization. We'll just take a quick look at the Olmecs. So the Olmecs of Mesoamerica, because their civilization falls into decline by 400 BCE, they predate the time period we are primarily concerned with for this unit. However, there are some notable similarities between the Olmecs, Maya, and the Aztecs, so a quick look will give us some background on important civilizations of the Americas. The Olmecs are well known for their colossal head carvings, like the one pictured on this slide. Much of their civilization and achievements may have been influenced or may have influenced later civilizations like the Maya and the Aztecs. They engaged in bloodletting rituals and the distinctive Mesoamerican ball game, both of which have been recorded as parts of other Mesoamerican cultures. The Olmecs are also the very first civilization in the Western Hemisphere to develop a writing system. The mathematical concept of the number 0 was devised by the Olmecs, and the calendar system they used is remarkably similar to both Aztec and Maya calendar systems. The reason for the decline and disappearance of the Olmecs is still somewhat mysterious, as it is with the Maya civilization. So that's going to take us to the Aztecs, or Mexica. While the Aztec Empire is most commonly referred to as Aztec, the name the peoples of this culture called themselves was Mexica. Both names refer to the same civilization, and you will encounter both in and outside readings and research. The Aztec Empire reached its height much later than the Maya and the Olmecs. They established an empire tied together by tributary relationships. They were much more centralized than the Maya in this regard. Their empire spanned southern Mexico, and the center of the empires was in a city called Tenochtitlan. So let's talk about the founding of Tenochtitlan. The Mexica were originally part of a migrant group from northern Mexico, from a place called Aztlan, thought to be a mythical place, that eventually broke off and formed the empire that we know as the Aztec people from Aztlan Empire. According to Aztec legend, the Mexica people received a vision from their god Huitzilopochtli of an eagle perched on a cactus, eating a snake. When the Mexica saw this in real life, it was supposed to be the location of their new home. It was on an island in Lake Texcoco that the Mexica saw the legendary eagle, and Tenochtitlan was founded. The area that was Tenochtitlan is now modern-day Mexico City, and the Mexican flag features the eagle from the Mexica vision in the founding story of Tenochtitlan. Pictured is a hand-drawn map of Tenochtitlan based on the observation of Hernan Cortez when the Spanish arrived in 1519. So let's examine the organization of society here. Aztec society had a clear hierarchy with the divine ruler at the very top. Pictured on the left are Aztec warriors. Becoming a successful warrior that could capture valuable prisoners was a way for people to move up in the societal ranks. The picture on the right tells a story of a commoner advancing through these social ranks by way of taking captives in war. The empire did not maintain a standing army, but rather all men could be mobilized for war at any time when needed. This provided an avenue for social advancement for almost all able Aztec men. Enslaved people in the Aztec Empire were never born into slavery. People generally entered slavery as a means to pay off debts, so indentured servitude or corvée labor. Or they were war captives. Slaves could earn their freedom, and slaves were granted certain rights, such as land ownership or being able to consent to being sold, that we rarely see in other forms of slavery throughout the world at this point. It was very different than chattel slavery, which we will cover in later units, where people are born into slavery, cannot exit slavery, and whose children will inherit the status of slave. Notice the quetzal feathers adorning the higher class warriors in these pictures, like we talked about earlier. So how did they maintain power in the Aztec Empire? Emperor Itzcoatl, his reign over the Aztec is where we see the building and solidifying of central power in the Aztec Empire. Itzcoatl united 3 Aztec city-states after winning a conflict to establish the Triple Alliance. The city-states of Itzcoatl's Tenochtitlan, combined with nearby Tlacopan and Texcoco, form the Triple Alliance, which is the foundation of the Aztec Empire. Prior to the Triple Alliance, the Aztecs functioned more similarly to the Maya with independently controlled city-states. With the three large cities under the control of Itzcoatl, expansion of the empire began. Having all the men of the Triple Alliance able to engage in conquest for Itzcoatl, he was able to conquer many neighboring areas and set up tributary demands. Tributary relationships are what held the empire together, but they are also what caused instability at times. Tributary demands were often so high that the tributary states could not meet the demands of Itzcoatl, and this led to revolts, and city-states had to be reconquered. For this reason, the empire was considered a loose empire. The large amounts of tribute flowing into Tenochtitlan helped to build roads and temples and other infrastructure. Itzcoatl set the stage for major expansion under the next emperor, Moctezuma. So let's take a quick look at Mesoamerican states and the timeline. This general timeline shows the overlap and the extent of each of the three Mesoamerican civilizations covered in this lecture. It's important to note that the Aztec time frame from 1325, establishing of Tenochtitlan, to the 1521 fall to the Spanish, does not include the Mexica peoples that formed the basis for the Aztec civilization. The Mexica began to migrate south towards the future Tenochtitlan in the 11th century. It's also worth noting that both Maya and Aztec cultures, languages, and peoples have persisted to modern day. Over 40% of people residing in present-day Guatemala claim indigenous heritage from various indigenous groups, including the Maya. About 15% of people in present-day Mexico claim indigenous heritage, which includes Aztec heritage. All right, so let's go ahead and examine the Inca Empire. Pictured here is the famous Machu Picchu ruins of the Inca Empire in Peru. So the Inca Empire was located in South America and expanded to cover areas in the Andes Mountains that included present-day Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, Chile, and Argentina. The political center of the empire was Cusco, a city in present-day Peru that began as a city-state before expanding into the greater Inca Empire. This was the largest empire in the pre-Columbia Americas. So the kingdom of Cusco expands. Well, Pachacuti is considered the founder of the Inca Empire. He was in fact the 9th ruler of the Inca chiefdom. His father was named Inca Viracocha, and it was this family line for which the Inca Empire is named. The emperor of the Incas was referred to as the Sapa Inca. Pachacuti had 3 sons, shown on the slide, and Tupac Inca Yupanqui would succeed his father in 1471 as Sapa Inca and continue expanding the empire before the arrival of the Spanish. Now, an interesting fact, rapper Tupac Shakur was partly named for the last Sapa Inca, Tupac Amaru, a supposed descendant of the family shown here. There is debate, though, about whether or not Tupac Amaru was actually related to these founding members of the Inca Empire. So let's examine the religion in the Inca Empire first. Religion and governance were tied very tightly in the Inca Empire. After Pachacuti, the Sapa Incas all claimed to be descended from Inti, the sun god and patron deity of Cusco. This divine imperial lineage was important throughout the entirety of the Inca Empire until Spanish conquest in the late 1500s. Second in line to the Sapa Inca was the chief priest to the empire. Religious festivals were presided over by the Sapa Inca himself, and he was a divine ruler. Like both the Maya and the Aztecs, the Inca were polytheistic and worshipped many deities for specific purposes. The Inca engaged in a process of mummification and believed that preserving the bodies of the dead aided the soul in making a long, difficult journey to the afterlife. Child sacrifice played a role in the belief system of the Incas and was performed surrounding major events, like the death of a Sapa Inca. Children were not the only sacrifices. Records indicate that women, animals, and objects were also used as offerings. Oftentimes, when a sacrificial offering was to be made at any number of religious sites across the empire, the potential offerings, whether it's women, children, etc., were first presented to the Sapa Inca, who then decided which offerings were suitable for particular locations. Sacrificial victims were mummified, and their preservation process was so good that Incan mummies have actually been the most intensely studied mummies in the world, contrary to popular belief about Egyptian mummies. This is a good time to discuss the Incan Ice Maiden. While it's not crucial that you memorize this information, it is an interesting window into how archaeologists and historians can piece together elements to understand a culture which did not have or leave written records. There is an excellent short video that reveals some of the process of discovery and preservation of the Ice Maiden, which I will have placed a link to in the description below if you really want to check out that video. So let's dive into the Incan economy. The Incan Empire operated as a subsistence economy, which is one that is aimed at providing for a population rather than a market economy, which is geared towards producing for profit. So the Incan economy is a stark contrast to the Song dynasty economy, which was highly commercialized. For this reason, trade outside of the empire is not extensive, and currency was never developed. However, within the empire, goods did move over great distances. Incan engineers were exceptional, and roads and complex bridges created a well-connected empire. The longest single stretch of road, known as the Andean Royal Road, was about 3,500 miles long, which is 5,600 kilometers long. This is considerably longer than any road in the Roman Empire's famous road system. Now, unlike the Maya and the Aztecs, the Incas had domesticated pack animals to help move goods along very long distances. The llama is still an important domesticated animal in Peru today. So how did the Inca maintain control in the empire? Effective and quick communication is a key component of maintaining a large state. The Inca developed a relay system in which young males called chasquis would sprint between designated areas and verbally recite a message to the next chasqui, who would then run to the next stop or designation. Messages could travel up to about 250 miles, that's 400 kilometers per day through this system. When more pressing matters like revolts or attacks needed to be communicated to Cusco quickly, the chasquis would make large fires, and when the next post saw the smoke, they would light a fire, and so on until the news reached its destination. When the empire was organized into 4 regions: the northeast, the northwest, the southeast, and the southwest regions, with Cusco at the center. When new areas were incorporated into the empire, there was an intentional movement of people out of the conquered region into the areas close to Cusco. This created a diverse population, but also reduced the chances of revolts against the empire. People united by a common language couldn't band together as easily. The general population was divided into taxpayer units, usually of 100 people. People paid taxes through labor, called the mita system. Officials oversaw these units, and a hierarchy of officials went all the way up to the highest bureaucrat in Cusco. Additionally, the Inca had a set of 3 moral laws that everyone within the empire was expected to follow. A legal enforcement group called the Toko Rikoke were tasked with making sure citizens followed these laws, and it's listed on the right of the slide. When we end our look at the Inca here. They eventually fall to the Spanish in 1572, which is for a later unit. The population was also ravaged by smallpox and measles, and much of the physical remnants of the Inca were destroyed by the Spanish. So this is a good place to start talking about pre-Columbian North America. Pictured from left to right, we have the ruins of Chaco Canyon in New Mexico. In the middle, we have an illustration of Cahokia mounds, and on the right, we have the Mesa Verde cliff dwellings. So let's start with the Mississippian cultures. Mississippian cultures refers to many different Native American groups over a long time frame in the eastern half of the present-day United States. They were generally found around and east of the Mississippi River, hence the name Mississippian. While different regions and chiefdoms, of course, had different practices, there are some defining features of many Mississippian groups. They are characterized by the construction of earthen mounds, which you can see in the illustration on this slide. These mounds served as platforms for other structures. Another notable aspect of Mississippian culture was that titles and power were passed through the women's side of the family. This is called matrilineal society, and it does not mean that the woman or women held all the power, but rather that inheritance moved through the women's side of the family. Trade networks stretched all over the present-day U.S., covering most territory except what is west of the Rocky Mountains. Pictured here is an illustration of a South Appalachian Mississippian plaza complex in Tennessee. You can see the 2 large mounds with the smaller structures built on top of them. The Mississippian city of Cahokia, located in present-day Illinois, is well known for its mounds, of which 80 of the original 120 still exist today. The most famous mound is called Monk's Mound, the middle illustration back on slide 24. And it is 10 stories tall and covers about 14 acres. The entire mound is man-made, so there wasn't any existing mound or hill beneath it before construction began. So what does urbanization look like in Cahokia? When looking at the development of any civilization, it is important to take note of urbanization and population growth. Several important factors can lead to urbanization, and they indicate major changes within a society. Recall from the song China Topic that urbanization occurred as they became a more heavily commercialized society. Their population boom was due in large part to the importance of the champa rice that supported a growing population and allowed for more commercial production to take place. In Cahokia, the sudden population explosion that is believed to have happened roughly between 1050 and 1100 marks a substantial change in how Mississippian city was organized. To support such a dense city population, food had to be brought in from outside. Farming outside of the city increased during this time, and food was brought into the city center. Archaeological evidence reveals that small homes within the city were removed to create more expensive plazas, and new homes were built that were better suited for city living. At its height, Cahokia is thought to have had a population of around 40,000 people, making it larger than some of its European contemporaries like London and Paris at the time. As with any growing city, problems of waste management arose, which likely contributed to a stall in growth. The city was abandoned around the year 1450, and it isn't completely clear why. Some suggest that the city's large population couldn't be sustained, and others suggest environmental factors. Urbanization, especially sudden urbanization, is a great point of focus when discussing change over time within a particular culture because shifts in food production and living arrangements usually occur. So let's examine settlements in the Southwest, the American Southwest. The Chaco and Mesa Verde settlements are great examples of the dry climate settlements of the American Southwest during this time period. Pictured here are the ruins from the Chaco Canyon settlements. Huge houses were constructed from stone that had as many as 100 rooms. Rainfall in the area amounts to an average of only 8 inches per year, so water from the nearby Chaco River had to be used carefully. Both the people of Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde developed water storage systems, also constructed from stone to ensure adequate water supply for their populations year-round. Later, Native American peoples like the Navajo considered the Pueblo peoples of Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde to be their ancestors. So here we have the Mesa Verde cliff dwellings. Chaco Canyon lies in present-day New Mexico, while just north across the border in Colorado is the famous Mesa Verde cliff dwellings. These homes were built into the sides of overhanging cliffs, making them exceptionally unique building structures. These are some of the best preserved native structures in the United States. The people of Mesa Verde, just as with the Chaco, had to devise methods of storing water in order to sustain their population because of the dry climate. The phrase Mesa Verde means green table and refers to the green landscape atop the flat mesas where farming occurred. So that wraps up what we need to know for topic 1.4. Here I have your key ideas for review. Now, I remind you, try and take some quick notes. Create some notes for yourself to use as review for the exam. I want to point out that these are the major ideas that you should be well versed in at a minimum for this topic. So please take some time to make sure you guys got these marked down. If you want some sort of better review as well, please visit the link in the description for Heimler's AP World History Topic 1.4 review. Thank you.